Hi, welcome to A Foreigner in the Philippines. Well, I've got my glasses on again, so it means I'm reading. Now, I always talk about how I get letters which are both educational, both touching, both rewarding, both interesting, both heartbreaking, and they never apply to just one person. It's never just about one person. None of us have special problems. We all have the same problems. You may not have a problem with a Ford motor car. You may have a problem with a Chevy motor car, but you'll have a problem with a car, right? You may not have a problem with Mrs. Jones, your mother-in-law, but you may have a problem with Mrs. Smith, your brother-in-law. So in other words, it's not just about you. We all have very, very similar problems. And these problems can be solved usually better by someone else, because someone else is not so embroiled in that particular set of issues. So I had this letter. It's quite a long letter. The man has written to me once before, right? I'm going to call him Mr. A. Now he said, "I hope you and your wife are doing fine," blah, that kind of thing. I'm back today for more advice. He said, "But this time I'll actually tell you all and not be vague about my situation." By the way, he said that I could respond to him in a video or by an email, and as this is a common issue to Filipinas going to America or to any other foreign country, I thought that I'd do it as a video. So he says, "I would really appreciate if you could reply either by email or video, does not matter." He said, "I've been living in China for 6 years now and I'm married to a very good woman. The first 2 years we lived in Shanghai, and for me as a foreigner I had interaction from time to time with other foreigners and had the luxury of going, as I love, every morning for a coffee at a local coffee shop or McDonald's or whatever." Shanghai, by the way, is an incredibly modern city. So the facilities there are incredible. Then my wife decided she wanted to move back to her hometown, very, very, very far from anywhere. Now I know how this feels, because I've lived very, very, very far from everywhere in China myself. So from anything, far from anything, to be honest, there's only one KFC. And they never serve coffee, even because there's never a request for coffee. He said, "And by the way, I'm the only foreigner." So to be honest, he says, the last 4 years have been hell for me, as I am the only foreigner in this little town, and besides my wife, there is absolutely no one to talk to. Now, I know you're going to ask me, do I speak Chinese? No, I don't. I started learning while we were in Shanghai for only 3 months. I attended classes and I liked it, and I made some progress, but since we moved here, I find it extremely hard to learn on my own, and there are no facilities. So he says, to be honest, his wife doesn't seem to care and doesn't support him in learning Chinese, since her English, he says, is better than his. So, anyway, I feel hopeless, to be honest, and I feel that she controls my whole life here, since I can almost do nothing here without her. It's a very important point, this. I asked her many times for us to move back to Shanghai or another big city where I can at least attend Chinese classes and have some interaction with other foreigners, but she says she wants to be close to her parents and she cannot move away from here. Said, "I really love her, but to be honest, I feel I cannot live like this anymore. We fight a lot almost every month about this. I feel like I'm in prison. Hope you can give me some advice." So I won't go into the nice things he says about me, because I'm not really that much wiser than anybody else. But I do know one thing. It's important to love and be loved. It's important to be with someone who you feel loves you as much as you love them, or very close. Maybe you can accept that they do not actually interact with you the same as you would like them to, but it's important that they should love you as much as you love them. And if you don't have that, then you're going to be very unhappy. There's no question about this. Now, there's a few very important pointers here for this man and this letter. Let me give you one. His email is Poor White Boy. Now, Sir A, as long as you feel you deserve the email Poor White Boy, you got some work to do. Right, going to give you some tough love here. Start loving yourself. Never mind about loving another woman. Never mind about loving another person. Start loving yourself. It's an old-fashioned thing now. It's become a little bit hammed up, you know. The songwriters have grabbed onto this, and the important love is the love you have for yourself and all of that. Whitney Houston's done it to death. It's all been done, but it nevertheless is wise. Unless you think well of yourself, you cannot expect anybody else to think well of you, because people, listen to this carefully, people accept you at your own evaluation. Now, if you don't think highly of yourself, guess what everybody else is going to think of you? Not very highly. So, how do I know a person who doesn't think very highly of themselves? Usually they're compulsive talkers. They talk and talk and talk and talk. And they're afraid of taking a breath because someone else might start talking and they won't be able to continue talking and holding someone's attention. Of course, they're not really holding anyone's attention. That's the problem. They're not holding anyone's attention, and therefore they're not really talking to anyone. Now, if you know anything that's more frustrating than talking to someone who doesn't actually listen, then you'll understand what I'm talking about when I say this. It's important to have a 50-50 share. You talk 50 and the other person talks 50. Or you agree to listen very, very carefully about what someone is saying. Now, Dalai Lama said, if you talk, you don't learn. If you listen, you might learn. Because if you talk, all you're doing is saying stuff that you've said before and thought before and decided before and assumed before, and you don't learn anything yourself. Maybe you'll teach the other person something, but you yourself will not learn because you're not listening. So, when you listen to someone, you actually give them something that's very important. You give them your attention. Now, the thing is that for a good relationship, you're supposed to get your share. And it is true. You're supposed to get your share. Who says what your share is? You do. If you feel loved, it doesn't matter what anybody else says. It doesn't matter if anybody else looks in on and says, whoa, he or she doesn't care about you. It's what you think. So the first clue is, poor white boy. Wise up, you're worth better than this, Sir A. Now, the other thing is, he says that he enjoyed being in Shanghai. And why did he enjoy being in Shanghai? Was it because he went out everywhere with his wife and they saw things and they went on the high rise, and they went here and they went there, and they saw so much beauty and shared stuff and held hands and kissed and hugged and made love. No, it was because he went out for coffee with foreigners. So, evidently, his wife got fed up of that and said, well, actually, I might as well go back and be with Mum and Dad. So, she decided that they were going back to her home. And she left Shanghai, which, as I said, is an incredible city, and they went back to where she lived, a small town in China is no place for a foreigner who doesn't speak Chinese to be. Why? Because he will be met with blank faces wherever he goes. When I first took a leap of faith and just jumped on a plane, went to Hong Kong, when I got to Hong Kong, I took the bus straight over to the ferry, and I got a ferry to mainland China. And it took me 2 or 3 days to find out how to call home, because it didn't seem like anybody spoke English. How did I find out in the end how to do it? I asked somebody in McDonald's. So, if you're a foreigner and you're in China and you have a wife that you love very much, but your main high points of your life are sitting with other foreigners in McDonald's or a coffee bar or this or that, as I see so many expats doing here in the Philippines, then you need to look at some things. And the first thing to do is the first thing you need to do. That is, you need to address the quality of your relationship. That's how it seems to me. So what we do is we make decisions as if we are, or this is the way that I would suggest. Make decisions as if you are on a bus and you're going from A to B. And when you're going from A to B, you look at the different stops. And when you look at the different stops, you look at the first stop, and there'll be, there'll be a butcher's shop, and there'll be a confectioner's and a newsagent's. And then you look at the next stop, and then there'll be a dry cleaner's and maybe a movie house. And then you look at the third stop, and there'll be something else. So how do you plan your journey? Well, the first thing to do is to hop off at the butcher's shop and get the meat for dinner that night, okay? And probably a newspaper, and then you hop back on a bus again and you go to the next stop. You understand what I mean? You make decisions in a linear fashion so that you can at least sort out in your mind how things are going to be done. Now, the way that this applies to this man and his relationship is, how much does he value this relationship, and why? Why does it serve him to be with a woman who has moved back against his will and against his happiness to be with her parents in a very small town? Now, apparently this is quite an intelligent woman, speaks very good English, thinks very clearly, knows what she wants, and knows how to get it. So, she probably is a very worthwhile lady, worth holding on to, if he loves her and if she loves him. How will we know? How will he know whether she loves him? Well, I know how I know. My wife will do things for me. And if I really said, I can't hack it up here in the hills, she would say, where do you want to go? that might be the difference. Not just how much he cares about her, or how much he says he cares about her, but actually how much he cares about her. That might be the make or break. Might be the deal breaker, as my friend Carl calls it. That could be the deal breaker. Now, if the deal breaker is that, wait a minute, no, it's obviously that she doesn't love me, then there's no decision to make, is it? You're going to leave. Or you're going to say, look, can we get back the love that we used to have? If you can get back the love that you used to have, and the person is interested, male or female, then you work at that. I once asked my wife, Beth, what would you do if you found that you didn't love me anymore? And she said, I would take it back to the beginning, before I felt anything, and I would start from there. And I would start looking at you, deciding why I wanted to be with you, and I would start to earn your love as well as give you mine. That's what she would do. Wise woman, my wife. So, what this man must do is, first of all, he's got to change his email, for God's sake. Poor white boy. Come on. And the other thing is, he's got to decide whether the quality of his life that he has there is worth any kind of sacrifice. And if his life revolves on having a McDonald's where he can go and have coffee with other expats, other foreigners, maybe he needs to redress his definition of what quality of life is. Now, no one can make up anyone else's mind about whether they're going to stay or whether they're going to leave a relationship. I don't believe this. What's important is that you take yourself to a place where you feel yourself, where you feel like it's you, not anyone else, that it's not anyone else saying, this is what I'd do if I were you. You must be mad if you're going to do that. Wow, why don't you do that? Never mind all of that. Take yourself off somewhere. Maybe it's McDonald's for a cup of coffee. But get yourself off and really find you. When you close your eyes at night, I've said this before, it's actually only you in there. But you hear everybody else. Now the trick is to single out everybody else and throw them out. And then whoever's left is you. Now for this man, he has to decide how he can go about changing the way that things are. Is he doesn't say whether there are any children, and he doesn't say whether they have money. And if they have money, whose money is it? Is it hers or his? You know, that dynamic is quite complicated. He needs to sort those things out, and then he needs to make a decision. And once he's made the decision, if it's based on sane factors, he needs to carry it through. Now, why do I think that this letter is of any interest to anyone who is a Filipina? I've tried to say this before to other Filipinas who are contemplating going to America or Britain or some other place. These other places are not as family oriented as yours. Nothing, I don't think there's anything that is quite as family oriented as the Philippines. The Philippines is family. Now, if you're going from family and you're going to go to America. In America, I lived in a street for 2 years, and I knew one other person in that street. And I knew them before I moved in. I knew one and her friend. And my next door neighbours, I knew the names of the two people next door. 2 years. That's how family oriented, because in family I also put in neighbours. It's not just about family. There's neighbours as well. That's a kind of a family thing as well. Now, if you're a Filipina and you're going over there and your English is not so great, you're going to be in that situation that this man was in, our poor white boy. There'll be no facilities for you unless your husband is with you. Like he said, he's trapped, he's in prison. He can't do anything in this small town because nobody speaks English, he's the only foreigner, and he needs to have his wife with him to do anything, so obviously he is in prison. What could he do to get out of that would be the same as what you can do to get out of that. You can take advantage not of the facilities that you wish were there, sir, A. Take advantage of the facilities that are there. Now, it's not true to say that you can't learn a language, because you can. You can learn any language. Now, you might call me a hypocrite if you like, because I'm very slow at learning the language. And once again, it is because everybody in the Philippines speaks damned English, don't they? So you can be as lazy as you like and you can do fine. But I do think that you should learn the language. Well, somebody out there will teach him Chinese. He'll have to learn Mandarin, probably, depending on where he lives. If he lives inland, it's going to be Mandarin. If he was on the coast, it wouldn't be Mandarin. So, he needs to blow down the barriers to learning and do whatever has to be done to learn the language. And then perhaps in 6 months' time he might decide, when he's changed everybody's perception of him by learning some of the language, and as soon as he starts and crosses a certain threshold, which he may be very, very close to, everybody will start teaching him Mandarin. Everybody will start. So, that's his problem. If you're a Filipina and you're thinking about going abroad, just remember that abroad is not the family-oriented place that you might think it is, that you might assume it is. It's not. And even within families, it's not family-oriented. Not the same as the Philippines. It's not the same for going for help. It's just not the same. You can be a very lonely person in America or in the UK or in any one of any other foreign country. Especially, hesitate to say this, but especially if you go to one of the Eastern countries, the Middle Eastern countries, where they have a hierarchy there of the mother. They have a women's compound in many of these countries, and if you're a wife there in very good standing, you will still go and be the junior wife, and you might not like that position. So make sure that you know what the culture is before you move to one of these countries. So maybe that's helped a little. I hope that that's helped our friend. I'll still send him an email and try to explain a little bit more. But beware when you go to another country. It's another culture, and It needs to be learned. How am I doing? People say that I've adjusted very, very well. Let me tell you, I am very self-contained, and I can be okay with my own company, and a lot of people can't. A lot of people are not good with their own company. You might want to cultivate this skill early on in life, because a lot of the time, even when you're in a crowd, you can be very lonely if you're not good with your own company. The other thing is, keep your own counsel. That means make your own decisions as far as you possibly can. So I expect that we'll be talking more on this subject. It seems to be an endless one, and it is, after all, about relationships. Actually, the whole world is about relationships. That's why you can keep on talking about it. And that's why we will end up talking about it again. This is a foreigner in the Philippines. Don't be alone out there. Bye.